So my skeptical answer is no, there's no such thing as the authentic self. By the way, that's not to say all selves are inauthentic. It's to say I think the distinction between authentic and inauthentic may be a bogus distinction. Let me say why I'm worried that it's a bogus distinction. Again, our question is what is authenticity? Rather than try to give a Socratic answer to that question, I have a quote from Oscar Wilde, which I wanted to read, which, roughly speaking, my thought is, if authenticity is anything, then it's what Wilde is talking about in this quote, or at least a big part of it. So he says, it's tragic how few people ever possess their souls before they die. Nothing is more rare in any man, says Emerson, than an act of his own. It is quite true. Most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives a mimicry, their passions a quotation. So that's Oscar Wilde. So again, that's not him trying to define authenticity. He's just trying to kind of he's using the concept there, but I think we can get the sense of what he's doing in that, what he has in mind by authenticity from that thought. I can't make sense of what he says there except in something like the following way. And again, if anybody here thinks this is a bad characterization of authenticity, I look forward to hearing it because I feel very unsure about this. But I think you have to have something like the view that there's a fundamental set of beliefs and values that a person has. And then an inauthentic life is a life that isn't lived in terms of or in the light of those fundamental beliefs and values, but rather is lived in the light of somebody else's beliefs and values, maybe society's or some particular group. So that is a kind of candidate answer to Socrates' question. What do we mean when we say something's authentic or inauthentic? It's something like that. Authenticity is living your life in terms of your fundamental values and beliefs, and then inauthenticity is not doing that. And then here's the skeptical worry. The skeptical worry is the very idea of a value or a belief is one where I think it's internally tied to action, to the idea of action. If that's right, you can't, whatever life you live, that's the life that expresses your fundamental values and beliefs. But if that's true, you can't live inauthentically, and in fact, you can't live authentically. The distinction breaks down, right? If the idea of living inauthentically is you've got these fundamental values, but you're, as it were, betraying them. You're selling them out and living according to somebody else's values or beliefs. Then, if what I just said is true, you can't live inauthentically, because whatever you wind up doing is going to be the expression of your values. And the reason for thinking that there's that tie between beliefs and values on the one hand and actions on the other is something like, look, we have to explain why you do what you do, no matter what it is. So suppose we meet somebody who we would say goes along with the crowd too much, or seems to want to please other people too much, or cares too much about the opinions of other people. That's a thing that person cares about. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing that, right? And that caring, that mattering to them, is not somebody else's mattering or caring, it's their mattering or caring. So the thought is, you could say that they're having a bad life, right? You could say that those aren't good values for them to have, and they should get some other values. But that's not an inauthentic life if that definition I just gave is right. There's not a disparity or dissonance between their fundamental outlook and what they're doing. And so again, I'm very open to the thought that people lead lives in terms of values that aren't good values, right? They live they live corrupt, bad lives because their values are corrupt. But that's not the idea of authenticity. The idea of authenticity is a kind of fit between your beliefs and desires on the one hand and your actions or the way you live your life on the other, not about the content of your beliefs and desires. Anyway, so that's sort of why I'm a little worried about the concept of authenticity. But I really want to emphasize, it's just a worry. I think probably there is such a thing as authenticity and authenticity. I'm just saying I can't quite see what it's supposed to be. Sorry, that was only answering one of your 4 questions. Emily, I apologize.
A reminder of the question.
I think sticking with just one might be a good choice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good.
We can always circle back around.
Yeah.
And I find that conversations about authenticity often sort of become a loop, exactly for the reasons you expressed, because we're trying to find out where to start. So we can apply that to the questions too, I think. All right, please.
I'm just, so trying to unravel over my mind what you're not, I'm not, trying to respond to that. But I think for me, again, coming from a position of faith, yes, so there's an ideal for me that I'm trying, in terms of authenticity that's framed in my values and my religious beliefs. So for me, I absolutely relate to what you're saying in terms of this, from my desire to like really attain that, sort of like take me through a day, where I would start in a day in prayer and have, the best of intentions of being authentically true to what God is calling me to do, who I am in Him, whatever that means, right? To be authentically Fiona as God created me to be. And then I'm falling short of that, right? So there's this constant like back and forth. But yes, I understand what you're saying in terms of like that's still authentically me, that I'm failing at being authentic, so I can resonate with that. But I think just going back to the fashion piece as well, in terms of this integrated approach to authenticity, I think that there's this sense of this reconciliation of the interior and the exterior to become more and more authentic is very interesting to me, because there's been a couple of quotes that I've used and referred to which are really intriguing to me, and one was from Tom Brown, who I don't know if you all know, is a menswear designer who grew up in LA, but he was quoted in GQ as saying, he grew up in LA and it was in a particularly hot climate. He was deciding to wear wool flannel suits, and what he said to the interviewer was, I wore wool flannel because that's how I felt on the inside, which is so, I just can't get away from that quote, because that to him was authenticity, an expression of his true self, as he would say, or whatever, and this sense of reconciling that authentic self externally by what he was wearing. And then there's another one that comes out in my mind, which was from Lady Gaga, and she was at the Women in Hollywood Awards in 2018, and she was picking an outfit to wear, and normally in those contexts you're wearing an evening gown or whatever, and she was trying one on after the other, and she was quoted as saying none of these made her feel like herself, right? But then she finds this oversized Marc Jacobs suit, which was very exaggerated and really oversized, and she put that on, and then she said, immediately I felt like myself, like welling up from the inside, the sense of who I am. And then I finally had the words, I knew what to say. So in a way, this which is so intriguing to me, but also I can understand that as well, in terms of suddenly you're wearing something that facilitates the ability for you to really represent yourself authentically to the world and feel comfortable in actually what you're saying and doing and being as a human being in that moment. So I think that whole piece is really fascinating to me as well, in terms of authenticity in clothing, facilitating an opportunity for you to be authentic or not.